恭请大德圣听，为此法会及一切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐，速证无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma will to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputoche. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa, 百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, medicine master, Buddha. 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 Medicine master does come one, medicine master does come one, medicine master does come one, medicine master does come one. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome back. This is class number 59 of our exploration of the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra. Actually, we are exploring the Dharma using the Sutra as a vehicle. Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. We are in the vehicle of the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra, and we are sightseeing, looking at all places of interest in the Dharma, like kind of like on a vacation. Okay, let me end this slideshow and choose today's slideshow. Okay. All right, so where are we? We are continuing with last week when we were looking at right intention and what's right intention. And I'm going to do a quick summary. Okay, maybe I just do it now. Okay. So the Buddha said, what is right intention? So right intention is the application of right view. So when you have right view or right understanding, then you put it into practice, it becomes right intention. And it is characterized by three things, which is the more you practice or the more you apply right view, you reduce your attachments or your desires. So the intention of renunciation. And then the second is the intention of goodwill, which counters ill will or hatred. And then the third one is the intention of harmlessness, as to reduce any thoughts of resulting thoughts of anger or animosity that may lead to harmfulness. Excuse me. Just let me mute the mic. Okay, so after that, we looked at the best examples of beings who practice right view and right intention and how that looks like. So we were looking at the Bodhisattva conduct from the Flower Adornment Sutra. We looked at Universal Worthy's mind, at his mindset as he does his Bodhisattva practices, as well as not just his mindset right now, but what led him to, how did he become a Bodhisattva, basically. So right now we are looking, it's kind of like looking behind the curtain to see what makes a Bodhisattva tick, like what's going on in the Bodhisattva's mind. And we also looked at chapter, let me see, we looked at chapter, one of the chapters in the Flower Adornment Sutra. Maybe someone can type it in the chat box. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to continue with the same sutra, which is the Avatamsaka Flower Adornment Sutra. But we're going to look at chapter 26, which is the second ground. Why are we going to look at chapter 26 or the second ground? Chapter 26 is actually the 10 grounds. And we're going to look at the second ground among the 10 grounds. And we're looking at that because on the second ground, the Bodhisattva, who is still, I guess you can consider although he's already a Maha Bodhisattva, he's a great Bodhisattva, he's still among the Bodhisattvas, still at maybe considered like a junior level. He's on the second ground. But what he does on this ground is he perfects the precepts. And so we'll look at how he does that. Do you have any questions, by the way? If you have unmuted your mic, or you can type it in the chat box. If not, I'm just going to go ahead. If I see anyone unmute their mic, I'm just going to mute you. And if you have a question, you can type in the chat box or you can unmute and ask. Okay. So this is a moment when a bodhisattva actually perfects his precepts. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Perfects the precepts and how he views his relationships with the precepts and living beings. Any question or remarks, JinHe? No?
Amitabha, Dharma Master.
Yes.
You know the previous slide? The previous slide?
Previous slide? Okay, let me go back to the previous slide. Yes.
Yes, Amitabha. The point number 3, the intention of harmlessness versus governed by harmfulness. Okay. It's myself that misread it. Okay, I get it now. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, let's move forward. All right. So, let's look at how the Bodhisattva sees precepts in terms of himself, the practice, and living beings. So, this chapter, I'm just going to read. It says, he has abandoned who? The Bodhisattva on the second ground has abandoned sexual misconduct, has naturally found satisfaction in his relationship with his own wife, does not seek to indulge desires outside of that. And with regard to those women under the protection of others, he does not even bring forth any such thoughts. How much the less might he pursue such affairs? So there's an interesting sentence here. It says, with regards to those women under the protection of others. I spoke about this before when the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, explained the 5 precepts on sexual misconduct. He says, it means anyone under the protection of someone else. So that's a very elegant and comprehensive way of looking at people, because for most people, if anything happens to them, there will be someone else who will be disappointed, or someone else who wishes that that person never comes to harm. It could be a family member, it could be a relative. There's a family member. So it could be a relative, it could be a friend, it could be a teacher, it could be a co-worker, anyone. As long as there's someone who cares for a person, that person is considered to be under the protection of others. Okay, let's move on. Sutra continues to say, he has abandoned false speech, hateful speech, harsh speech, excuse me, frivolous speech, lewd speech, and divisive speech. He has entirely cast away and abandoned all such forms of speech as this. Whatever he says is such as others might find extremely delightful, such as is fine, sublime, and pleasing to the ear, that which is able to transform the minds of others, that which is entirely perfect in its harmonious and softness, that which the many would cherish and remember, that which is able to cause others to become delighted, pleased, and happy. He constantly causes in just such sorts of speech as this. So that's how the Bodhisattva uses his mouth, his speech, every day, all the time, all living beings. And then he does not covet the possession of others. In any instance involving something belonging to another, something to which something else is himself covetously attached, or something that someone else has appropriated for their own use, he does not think, I should take that thing. So if it's not given to you, it's not yours. You know, if you want to hold it properly, if you see something by the road, you also do not appropriate or take it for yourself, because it has not been given to you. Actually, there's I'll interrupt here with a story that just came to my mind. So there was this monk. I don't have the details of where this came from, but I can find it if anyone is interested. So there's a monk who went to a lake, and at the lake there were lotus flowers. And previously, before this monk came, there were other people who came, and they were very, they weren't respectful of the place. So they just, plucked the lotus flowers. They were smelling the flowers. They were, I guess, maybe eating the seed pods, the seeds out of the pods of the lotus flower, and just making a mess of the whole place. And then after they left, this monk came, and as he happened to walk past a lotus flower, he I'm not sure what the right word to use. He smelled the fragrance of the flower, and I think he enjoyed it internally. And then there was a spirit that was in charge of the place. There's a spirit taking care of the place. Let's call it the lake spirit. So the lake spirit, upon seeing the monk act this way, scolded the monk and said, how can you, as a monk, how can you enjoy the fragrance of the flower? And then, so the monk was a bit confused. He said, but all these people who just came by, they acted like animals, and they destroyed the beautiful plants, and how come you didn't say anything? And all I did was just, catch the fragrance of the flower while walking by. And it's not as if the monk put his head, buried his nose into the flower and took a deep breath. He just walked by, and his mind chased after the fragrance as it went through his nose. And then the lake spirit said, those people don't know any better, but you do. So so that's how the lake spirit viewed the monk, and the monk then thanked the lake spirit for his or her how you say advice, because when he was scolded, uh, n- it was out of a heart of goodness to make sure the monk would succeed in his practice. So that story came up. So meaning, if you know already that you're not supposed to do something, then don't do it. That's the principle of the story. Okay, let's continue with the sutra. It says, the Bodhisattva, he abandons hateful and injurious thoughts of begrudging and enmity, and thoughts intended to persecute and anger others. With respect to other beings, he always entertains thoughts seeking fine circumstances for them, thoughts moved by cherishing affection for them, thoughts motivated to benefit them, and thoughts motivated by kindness and compassion. Last week, I gave the example of, say, if you travel back in time and you happen to see the Buddha before he became the Buddha, climbing out of the river, and at the point where he had decided for himself that modification of the body, that means subjecting the body to extreme stress, was not the way. And the Buddha found that out because he took that practice to the extreme. If he had continued with his practice, that form of practice, physical punishment of the body, he knew he would have died. So he said he's going to investigate the mind instead of trying to find enlightenment through the body. So the thought experiment was going back in time. If you didn't know that that was going to be the Buddha, most people would be horrified or disgusted because the prince would have looked less than human, all skin and bones. It is said that if you looked at his stomach, you will be able to see his spine because that's how thin he was. And with thoughts of maybe even fear or disgust, we would recoil, we want to stay away. But if you knew that that was going to be the Buddha, if you knew that this being was going to sit under that tree for 49 days and achieve enlightenment, and not just any kind of enlightenment, it would achieve Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, the perfect enlightenment of a Buddha. It would totally transform your thoughts, your actions, and even your speech. You wouldn't even dare, you wouldn't do anything to disturb the Buddha or the soon-to-be Buddha. You would not do anything to delay his progress along the path, because that would come naturally. You don't have to, it's not something that you think or you deliberate. It's just a very natural mode for you to be in. So a bodhisattva treats living beings in such a way that you can apply that kind of mindset. You don't want to delay anyone from their potential of Buddhahood. You don't want to if you can help it, you don't want to make them unhappy. You don't want to cause them stress, and then out of stress and unhappiness or anger, they create more karmic obstacles for themselves and delay their own path to happiness. Why would you want to do that? So that's one of the mindsets behind a bodhisattva. So the more people you can see, not for who they are right now, but if you can go beyond the surface, the form, and look at them for their potential, which is they all have the Buddha nature. So one day they're going to be Buddhas. They're all just like you. They just want to be happy and free from harm, which is we're going to come to that towards the end of today's class, then, at the very least, if we don't have the wisdom to save living beings, which is what Mahayana Buddhists always repeat, I vow to save all living beings. If we don't have the ability of the wisdom to do that right now, at the very least, don't delay them, hold them from their potential, at all. Don't contribute to any of their delays. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. So the Bodhisattva also abandons practices such as divination, that's fortune telling, astrology, things like that, causes in right views, and possesses definite and profoundly deep belief in causes and conditions as the determinants of karmic offenses and merit. He abandons all flattery and deviousness, possesses sincere faith in the triple jewels or the three jewels, and brings forth resolute and fixed resolve. Thus it is that the Bodhisattva skillfully guards his causing in the good karmic path. He reflects in this manner. Those beings who fall into the wretched destinies in every case do so on account of causes and conditions associated with the 10 bad karmic paths. The 10 bad karmic paths here are referred to the 10 unwholesome deeds. So let's continue. It says, I should now dwell in the dharmas of the 10 good karmic deeds, or the 10 wholesome deeds, and for the welfare of others, should also explain all of the good dharmas to them, revealing for them the basis of right practice, or the foundations of right practice, or how you achieve right practice. So this is an insight into the mind of a bodhisattva who is at the level where he has just perfected or going, let me see, at this point of the sutra, I think he has perfected the precepts at this stage, yes. And then, but don't take my word for it. Go read the sutra for yourself. Investigate the sutra, and it says, and why should he proceed in this manner? If you had the same question, this is the answer. It is because if one fails to personally cause in goodness himself, and yet nonetheless expects that he might cause others to dwell in goodness simply by explaining such dharmas for their sakes, this would be a complete impossibility. Meaning the bodhisattva is not a hypocrite. He doesn't tell you to do things that he himself would not do. First, he makes sure that he has maybe perfected from the bodhisattva's view, he perfects the practice first before he talks to others. And what's another way to describe that? Virtue. He makes sure he has virtue before he speaks of virtue. Okay. And going on, he says, it is on account of the causes and conditions associated with causing the 10 unwholesome or 10 bad karmic deeds that beings consequently fall into the hell realms, into the animal realms, and into the realms of the hungry ghosts. These are known as the 3 lower paths. Sutra says it is on account of the causes and conditions associated with causing in the 10 good karmic paths that beings consequently succeed in being born into the station of human rebirth and so forth on up to the station of the peak of existence. Also, if one cultivates these 10 good karmic paths together with the cultivation of wisdom, in the case of those whose resolve is inferior and weak, who take pleasure in lesser levels of merit, who are disgusted with and fear existence in the 3 realms, whose mind of great compassion is but meager, and who have heard the Dharma from others, their cultivation culminates in the Shravaka disciple hearing. Okay, there's a few things we need to unpack here. First is he says, people who practice the 10 wholesome deeds together with the cultivation of wisdom. And the reason why I highlighted that is a few weeks ago, I shared what Bodhidharma said. He said, Bodhidharma made a very clear distinction about people who blindly perform the 10 wholesome deeds or blindly hold the 5 precepts. So blindly means doing a practice without quite having the understanding of right view and right intention. Okay, so because this is at Bodhisattva level, which is, you can say, PhD level, he says that if you have the right practice, which is the 10 wholesome deeds, and you also have right view and right intention, but there's a but. What is the but? The but is their resolve is not as great as the Bodhisattvas or as the Buddhas. And because of that, they are unable to generate very superior levels of merit. And at the same time, their attitude towards the three realms, or towards, you can say, existence, is they have a aversion. And because of the suffering in existence, they just want to get away from suffering. And they have compassion, but it's not up to the level of the great bodhisattvas. And then the last ones are the ones that define who these people are. He says, who have heard the Dharma from others. So meaning they learn through hearing. So they're sound hearers. And who are sound hearers? They say, the last sentence says, the Sravaka disciple vehicle, meaning arhats, people who practice for their own liberation, because they, they are not at the level of being able to save others, or their resolve hasn't matched that yet. So these are sound hearers. These are the people who practice for the arhat vehicle. All right. And then he says, there are yet others who cause in the practice of the 10 good karmic paths who do not achieve their understanding through hearing teachings from others. So that's a difference here. They do not hear the Dharma. So what do? They say, who spontaneously develop their knowing awareness on their own, who are unable to completely perfect the skillful expedient means associated with the great compassion, and who become able to deeply penetrate the many dharmas of causes and conditions. For this, their course of cultivation culminates in the Pratyeka Buddha vehicle. So these are people who, when there is no Buddha in the world, meaning there is no Dharma, they become enlightened. They have ended birth and death by practicing the 12 conditioned links. So the common way of looking at it, or at least how I understand the 12 conditioned links, is you observe that there's a cycle of birth and death in throughout nature. And then you turn that focus inside and you see that it also happens within the mind. There's a cycle of birth, death, decay, birth, decay, death, and then renewal back into another circle. So without the Dharma, what they do is from outside, they observe inside and they get enlightened. So these are known as Pratyeka Buddhas, or solitary enlightened ones. Okay. And then Buddha goes on to say, Sutra goes on to say, there are yet others who are consummately pure in their causing in the 10 good karmic paths, whose minds are possessed of incalculable and boundless vastness, who with respect to beings have brought forth great kindness and great compassion, who are possessed of the power of skillful expedient means, and whose resolve in their vows are solid. Okay, guess which class of beings the sutra is referring to right now? Because they do not forsake any being, because they strive to acquire the great wisdom of the Buddha, because they engage in purifying cultivation of the Bodhisattva grounds, and because they are able to purify their practice of the paramitas, they consequently become able to enter the profoundly deep and vast practices. They are also able to carry forth the purifying practice of these 10 good karmic paths, and so forth until we come to their being able to achieve realization of the Buddha's 10 powers, the 4 fearlessnesses, the 4 unimpeded wisdoms, the great kindness, great compassion, and finally reach the point where they completely realize the knowledge of all modes and accumulate all dharmas of the Buddha. Therefore, we should all cause in the practice of the 10 good karmic deeds and should constantly strive to acquire omniscient wisdom. So first we talked about people who practice for themselves, because at their level they are. It is very they have not reached the level of the bodhisattvas yet. So they are classified as arhats. And then we talked about people, the sutra described people who do the same practice, but because there's no dharma in the world for them to listen to, what they do is they observe the world, and then they observe their own mind. And that's known as the 12 and then they discover the 12 conditioned links. And those are solitary enlightened ones, or Prajeka Buddhas. And now the sutra describes those who have the great resolve, the great vows to save all living beings. And so what do they think? What do these great beings think? It says, why don't we leave these 10 bad karmic paths behind and instead cause in the 10 good karmic paths while also influencing others? I think there's a typo there. Influencing others to cause in these 10 good karmic paths. So they don't just think about themselves, but they think about everyone else. Having thought in this manner, he then straight away, he or she, leaves behind the 10 bad karmic paths and also strives to influence others to bring forth the resolve to abide in the 10 good karmic paths. With respect to all beings, this bodhisattva then brings forth the mind intent on ensuring their peace and security, the mind intent on establishing them in happiness, the mind of kindness, the mind of compassion, the mind of kindly pity, the beneficial mind, the protective mind, the mind that sees them as teachers, the mind that sees them as great teaching masters, and the mind that sees them as like himself. So this is the mind of a bodhisattva. He's already a great being. He's on the second ground. He's already perfected the precepts. But at the same time, if you look at his mind, it is extraordinarily humble and caring and full of how you say, goodness and wholesomeness. This is someone you want as your best friend, someone you want by your side, someone who someone who you want them to be thinking of you all the time. Okay, all right. So now we turn to the worst part of the verse, or the verse, not prose, verse section of the sutra. It says, he contemplates how all beings everywhere undergo all of the different sorts of suffering and anguish, and having thus been moved to pitying mindfulness of their plight, develops an ever stronger mind of profound compassion for them. Thinking, common people are so very pitiable, having descended into all manners of wrong views, their minds so often cherish hatefulness and are ever fond of disputation. So he's talking about people who practice is lacking. We're not at the level where we can be independent and not being swayed by our conditions, and we are firmly on the path to end suffering. So it says they constantly delight in the 5 objects of desire and lust after them insatiably, thus generating causes and conditions linked to the 3 poisons. I should strive to bring about the liberation just such beings. I think there's a typo. Let me read that again. I should strive to bring about the liberation of such beings. That sounds more likely. So the Bodhisattva takes the responsibility upon himself to help other living beings who need help. Deeply submerged in the darkness of stupidity, they have fallen into the perilous destinies of cyclic birth and death. They have entered into the great net of erroneous views and have tumbled down into the cage of worldly existences. They are constantly assailed and brought to ruination by the demon thieves and their afflictions. Such beings as this are so extremely pitiable. I should strive to bring about their liberation. They have become submerged in the deep waters of their afflictions and are engulfed and swept along in the 4 floods. Within the 3 realms of existence, they undergo in the entirety all of the 100 varieties of sufferings, poisons. So these are people kind of like us, who don't really know upon our death where we're going to end up. We are totally not in control. We have no knowledge, no control about what's going to happen to us. It says they abide in the deep cave of the five aggregates, wherein they form conceptions of a self and how you pronounce it, appurtenances of a self, images of a self. In order to bring about the liberation from this suffering, I must diligently cultivate the path. For those who forsake the unexcelled wisdom of the Buddha and cause in inferior and mean thoughts, I must bring forth immeasurable great vigor in order to influence them to abide in the Buddha's great wisdom. So how about that? A Bodhisattva sees all beings suffering, and it motivates him to practice harder and to be successful in his practice so that he can come and save all of us from ourselves, from the suffering that we create for ourselves. So that's the mindset of someone who perfects the precepts. And if we can just take one of those mindsets and apply it to our practice, then it would really, really help. So now we know what is right intention. Okay, we know right intention is to reduce the three poisons, and it's the application of right view. And we spend quite a lot of time looking at right view, which is looking, which is how you say, understanding that everything is based on cause and effect. It's not thoughts and prayers, it's cause and effect. What else was right views? Not believing in a self or a person, as in there's a soul that goes from life to life. Is only our karmic habits that surface from one form, one physical form to the other. What else? About not being stubborn in our views, in holding on to wrong views. That's another wrong view. So for someone like us who's not up to the level of the Bodhisattvas yet, at least for myself, I'm not sure about all of you listening, some of you might be, but for everyone else, what do we do? Okay, now I'm going to introduce you to the sixth Petra and his commentary on what is Pure Land practice. Okay, so sixth Petra says, good and wise friends, he said, I exhort you now. Okay, how the sixth Petra started speaking about the Pure Land is because he was invited to a banquet by an official of that area. I think his name was Prefect Wei, and at the end of the banquet, Prefect Wei requested for Dharma, and he had a very interesting question. He said he sees people reciting the Buddha's name, and is it true that just by reciting the Buddha's name that you can end up in the Pure Land? And maybe one day when we investigate the Pure Land, we can come up with why would Prefect Wei ask such a question. Maybe he just saw a lot of monastics reciting the Buddha's name, but still had a lot of unwholesome habits, or they would maybe scold people or get upset with people and not make people happy, but they were reciting the Buddha's name, and so maybe that gave Prefect Wei a doubt. Is that really the Pure Land practice? You just recite the Buddha's name and you can get to the Pure Land. At least that's my understanding. Okay. All right. So, okay. So what does the sixth Petra say? It says, good and wise friends, I exhort you now. First, get rid of the 10 evils. That's the 10 unwholesome deeds. It says, in doing so, you will have walked 100,000 miles. Next, eliminate the 8 wrongs, and you will have covered another 8,000 miles. Okay, what are the 8 wrongs? The 8 wrongs is the opposite of the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, so 8 wrongs is the opposite of the Noble Eightfold Path. All right. If in every moment of thought you keep your essential nature in view, and if in everything you do and if in everything you do, you are even-minded, true and direct, then in a finger snap, you will arrive there and see Amitabha Buddha. Okay, what is if in every moment of thought you keep your essential nature in view? That is right intention. Right intention, I don't think I'll go back to that slide, but right intention uncovers, how you say, okay, right intention is a way to keep your essential nature in view. In other words, okay, at least that's how I interpret it. Okay, so it says, so in other words, I can rephrase this sentence to mean, if in every moment you have right intention, and if in everything you do, you are even-minded, true and direct, then in a finger snap, you will arrive there and see Amitabha Buddha. Okay, so again, right intention is anything you do that reduces your attachments or your desires, that promotes goodwill, less hatred, in animosity or ill will in you, and promotes harmlessness, ahimsa in Sanskrit, that reduces the actions of harmfulness that come from hatred and animosity. Okay, so the sixth Petrarch goes on to say, it says, good sir, if you just practice the 10 good deeds, then why would you further need to seek rebirth there? Okay, this can be a bit controversial. It says, but if you do not rid your mind of the 10 evil deeds, what Buddha would come to welcome you? If you awaken to the eternal direct Dharma, you will behold the West or the Pure Land in an instant. Without awakening to this, you might recite the Buddha's name, seeking rebirth there, but the road is so long. How could you ever traverse it? I will move the West here in an instant so you can see it right before your eyes. Would you all like to see it or not? Okay. But I think what the sixth Petrarch is trying to say here is that if you want to go to the Pure Land, it is still based on cause and effect. You still have to practice and transform yourself. So that's why it says, if you do not read, the second sentence, it says, if you do not rid your mind of the 10 evils, meaning the 10 unwholesome deeds, what Buddha would come to welcome you? So the only way you can get to the Pure Land is to practice. So don't mistake the form of just reciting the Buddha's name as Pure Land practice. That is a way to calm the mind and to strengthen your resolve. You still have to rely on the 10 wholesome deeds to change yourself, to purify yourself. So that's why the sixth Petrarch says, without awakening to this, you might recite the Buddha's name, seeking rebirth there, but the road is so long. So reciting the Buddha's name is good. You are planting good karmic seeds, but it does not directly result in you being born in the Pure Land. You accumulate these good seeds a bit by bit until your wisdom opens up to right view and right intention, and then you start actually practicing the correct way, which is holding on to the 10 wholesome deeds. Okay, so now he says he will show you the Pure Land, and I did not include the next part of the sixth Petrarch Sutra, where everyone says, yes, we want to see it. Okay, so what does he do then? This is how he shows you what the Pure Land is. It says, kindness and compassion are Avalokiteshvara or Guanyin. Sympathetic joy and equanimity are Maha Stama Prata, which is great strength Bodhisattva. Purifying oneself is Shakyamuni. To be unprejudiced and free of guile is Amitabha. So this is very interesting because kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity are known as the 4 Brahma Viharas. It is said that in the heavens, all the gods, how you say, the minimum of their behavior are all based on the 4 Brahma Viharas. They all behave this way. They all have kindness, loving kindness. They all have compassion for for living beings. They have sympathetic joy, and at the same time, they are unmoved by, how you say, they're not moved by emotions as they practice. And then the sixth paragraph goes on to say, egoism and arrogance are Mount Sumeru, sensual desires are the ocean's waters, and the afflictions are its waves. He's now talking about the Saha world. It says, cruelty is an evil dragon, vanity and dissoluteness are the ghosts and spirits, worldly passions are the fish and turtles, lust and hatred are the hells, and delusion is or are the animals. Why is he describing the Saha world in this way? Because all these things don't exist in the Pure Land. In the Pure Land, it's all flat. There's no high and low. It refers both to the topographic nature of the Pure Land, the landscape of the Pure Land, as well as to the mind. So there's, in the Pure Land, there's no space for Mount Sumeru, which in other words, there's no ego, there's no arrogance in the Pure Land. And he says, sensual desires are the ocean's waters and the afflictions are its waves. There's no seas of suffering in the Pure Land. There are no evil dragons or cruelty in the Pure Land. There are no ghosts and spirits there, which means everyone there has no vanity and or dissoluteness. There are no fish and turtles. And so there are no worldly passions. There are no hells, meaning everyone there has no lust or hatred. And there are no animals, or at least all the animals there are, how you say, there's a phrase for it. They are not born of karmic conditions, but are created by Amitabha Buddha, kind of, yeah. So there's no delusion in the Pure Land. So the way Sixth Petra explains what the Pure Land is very practical, is very elegant. And he brings it all back to practice. So if you want to get to the Pure Land, he said all these things are missing in the Pure Land. So if we have all these things, all these unwholesome deeds, ego and cruelty and all that, what Pure Land are you getting to? Do you even understand what the Pure Land is? So he's not reinterpreting, he is maybe, how you say, reorienting people's understanding of what the Pure Land actually is, because the Pure Land has existed for a very, very long time. And throughout centuries, perhaps people's understanding of the Pure Land has evolved into something that's not based on what the Buddhas actually taught. So he's bringing the Pure Land practice beyond just reciting the Buddha's name, but the Pure Land as a way of transforming yourself so you become pure, so you can get into the Pure Land. Okay, so he goes on to say, says, good and wise friends, always practice the 10 good deeds and you can easily reach the heavens. Get rid of egoism and arrogance and Mount Sumeru topples. Eliminate sensual desire and the ocean's waters dry up. When the afflictions cease, the waves come. When cruelty is ended, the fish and turtles are no more. Okay, it's not talking about literally fish and turtles, it's talking about fish and turtles in your mind. And it goes on to say, it says, gratitude being filial and supporting your parents, righteousness being sympathetic to those above and below, deference, high and low, showing mutual respect, patience, not gossiping about everyone's wrongs. So deference, high and low, showing mutual respect is getting away from the mind that judges. We judge people based on the clothes they wear, based on the car they drive. We always look at people at a very superficial level. And at the same time, we also see ourselves in very limiting ways. For example, I'm not smart enough, I'm not rich enough, or if only I was given, I missed my opportunity early in life, or things like that. But when it comes to the Dharma, all those things don't apply. When it comes to the Dharma, we all have the Buddha nature, and how much we uncover of our potential is up to us. It's not based on external conditions. It's an internal process. It says patience, not gossiping about everyone's wrongs. So look inside, don't look out. It says if rubbing sticks can spin smoke into fire, then a real red petal lotus can surely spring from the mud. It says good medicine is bitter to the taste. Good advice often hurts the ears. Reforming your failings gives birth to wisdom. Excusing and defending them shows a petty mind. Persist daily in being generous and forgiving. Donating money, however, cannot bring enlightenment. Okay, I think the donating money, however, cannot bring enlightenment is reference to his explanation of because in the Sutra, before this question was asked, there was a question asked about merit and virtue, and how there was the Emperor of China at that time when Bodhidharma was there, boasted about building a lot of temples, and he asked Bodhidharma, he said, how much merit do I have? And the answer from Bodhidharma was, you have no merit. And I think this is in reference to that. Donating money, however, cannot bring enlightenment, because if you are doing it, if you do good deeds, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, if you do good deeds, but your intention is, if you don't do it with the right intention, meaning to end suffering, to uncover your Buddha nature, then all you're doing is you are planting wholesome deeds that bring you back into rebirth. It is good. Those are wholesome karma, but they still have the cost of bringing you back into rebirth. So it says donating money, however, cannot bring enlightenment, but you have to have the right intention behind it. Okay. It says, search out Bodhi only in the mind. Why waste effort seeking outside in the occult? Is that how you pronounce it? Occult. Just practice according to these words and paradise will appear right before your eyes. So the Pure Land practice, what we are talking about right now, actually, okay, for sometimes I have to remind myself, all this, okay, all these past few weeks is because right now you're in the section of the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra, where it talks about people who fail to hold the precepts and they fall. Okay, so which is why we are investigating not the traditional way of looking at precepts, which is, you look at how you create offenses, you look at the very nature of the precepts. You're not really looking at that. There are enough classes that go in that manner, but we are looking at how do you hold precepts with right view and right intention. So actually the answer is very simple. It is the Pure Land method, where if you truly understand what the Pure Land method is, as you hold the precepts, you're constantly generating merit. So your mindset behind the precepts is very different from, say, how you started. Okay, I'll use myself as an example. When I started holding the precepts, the only reason, not the only reason, but the reasons why I held the precepts were, number one, I knew it was good, but I didn't really want to because I was younger then, and precepts meant I had to enjoy my life less, although those enjoyments are actually suffering, but I didn't know. So that's one reason. And then the second main reason, or maybe it was the main reason of all, was I knew that if you don't hold the precepts, your chances of being reborn as a human are very low. So precepts are the causes for future conditions of a human rebirth. So it was out of fear that I convinced myself to hold the 5 precepts. But now I know that through right view and right understanding, precepts, holding the precepts well, meaning as you generate merit while holding the precepts, meaning the intention behind your mind and your heart, as you interact with people, as you use your mouth, your body, and your mind, makes all the difference. Same practice, but just the mindset makes all the difference, which is why I shared how bodhisattvas hold the precepts, because they show you the ultimate potential that you have, that all of us have in our minds or hearts as we share the same practice. Okay, so we are at the end of time for this week, and I'm going to end today's class with a repeat of what Six Petrarch says. Kindness and compassion are guanyin, sympathetic joy and equanimity are great strength. So these four, okay, and then purifying oneself. Purifying oneself meaning constantly look after your every thought, everything you say, and everything you do. If you're mindful of the precepts and you filter everything you want to think about, say, or do through the precepts, that's purifying yourself. Okay, and then you don't judge, and free of gal. Gal, I'm not 100% sure what is it. Deception. So maybe someone can Google gal and put it in the chat box. Is Amitabha Buddha. Don't judge. Treat everyone the same. So coming back to the first four, kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity are actually very, very basic practices in Buddhism. You need loving kindness before you can. Okay, what is loving kindness? Let me share this. Okay. Hold on, let me look up my file and then I'll share it. So just bear with me. Okay, let me bring this, share the screen. Can you see that? Loving kindness. Okay, I'm very happy with this poster because I designed this poster. Okay, let me. Okay, if you look at the icon, it is a heart, and there are two hands hugging the heart. Okay, what does that mean? It means you hug your own heart. Why does that happen? Why do you want to hug yourself? Okay, the practice of loving kindness, Maitri in Sanskrit, or Metta in Pali, says begins with wishing for happiness for oneself and then extending that wish to others. In other contexts, loving kindness as the wish, loving kindness as the wish for the happiness of others is considered one of the factors that motivates the bodhisattva to seek all beings from suffering. So loving kindness is like one of the most basic practices in Buddhism, but you begin first with yourself. Okay, so Ron has replied about guile. He says sly or cunning. Okay, guile means cunning and intelligence. Thank you. Thanks, Lucy, as well. So loving kindness, before you can have a sincere wish for others to be happy, you can only have that if your foundation is strong, meaning you yourself are happy. And when the Buddha sent his monks into the forest to meditate, the only weapon they have, and it's funny to call it a weapon, but the only, defense. The only defense they have is loving kindness. They have nothing else except the practice of loving kindness to protect themselves against what? Against wild animals, like things that will try to kill you and eat you or harm you. Poisonous insects, centipedes, scorpions, and all those kind of things. What else? Spirits, harmful spirits. So there's actually a story in the sutras that the monks, they were trying to meditate in the forest, but the deva, the spirit devas or the forest spirits, somehow or other were unhappy with the monks. I think because when the monks were there, they had to behave in a certain way, the spirits. So they were very unhappy that the monks were there. So they tried to chase the monks out. And so I think they make things very difficult and scary for the monks. So the monks went to the Buddha and asked the Buddha for help. So the Buddha helped them, but indirectly, not by speaking to the spirits, but telling the monks, okay, you have to practice loving kindness and you have to radiate loving kindness to all these spirits. And he said, I'm not sure what he said it, but he said, when they stop disturbing you, then you know that you have succeeded in your practice. And so the monks practice loving kindness. And that's, for monks, that's the only defense we have. We can't take a stick, and go and hit a tiger or something if they come. We just have to rely on how we feel towards the thing that is trying to harm you or kill you. Yeah. So what else is there apart from loving kindness? Okay, let's look at compassion. Oh, on my screen, I'm not sure why it turns black. Compassion. Okay. Let me see if you can still read. Okay, you can't read, so I'll just read it for you. I can't read it either. Okay, let me pull up. Sorry for the interruption. Okay, maybe this will be more helpful. How do I increase? Oh, what did it? All right. So right now we are at compassion. So compassion is what loving kindness feels when it encounters suffering. It is the wish that others be free from suffering. The Bodhisattva develops great compassion, which aspires them to achieve Buddhahood in order to liberate all beings from suffering. So when you have loving kindness for people, after you have generated loving kindness for yourself, and you have loving kindness for everyone around you, or those you are able to generate loving kindness for, when these people encounter afflictions and they begin to suffer, then your loving kindness for them will generate compassion, because you will wish that they are free from suffering. So that's why we begin with loving kindness, and then from loving kindness, compassion spontaneously develops. So people talk about empathy, but if you don't have a wish for others to be happy, your empathy is very shallow. Your compassion is very shallow. It's not strong. And then empathetic joy. Okay, let me see if I can show you the poster. I hope it doesn't. It turns black again. What's wrong? Okay, anyway, we just read. Empathetic joy, or mudita, is what loving kindness feels when it encounters happiness. It wants the happiness to continue. So it is also known as sympathetic joy. So sympathetic joy or empathetic joy is the attitude of taking delight in the happiness and good fortune of others, and is the opposite of jealousy and envy. Again, what is that? That's merit too. So when you see people happy, you feel happy for them. And because you care for them and they're happy and you feel happy for them, then what do you call? It makes you happy. So everyone's happy. So, it's a win-win situation for everyone. Okay, let me show you what they all look like. Okay, so this is what they look like. So that's loving kindness, and then there's compassion, and then there's empathetic joy or sympathetic joy, and then finally you have equanimity. What's equanimity? Okay. Equanimity, or upekkha, acts as an aid and a check on loving kindness, compassion, and there shouldn't be, and there should be sympathetic joy. It is an even-mindedness towards all beings, regarding them with neither attachment nor aversion, as neither intimate nor remote. When you encounter suffering that you can't stop no matter how hard you try, you need equanimity to, am I saying equanimity? To avoid creating additional suffering and to channel your energies to areas where you can be of help. In this way, equanimity isn't cold-hearted or indifferent. It simply makes your goodwill more focused and effective. So equanimity is a way of managing your emotions and your attachments so that you can apply loving kindness, sympathetic joy, and compassion effectively. So in other words, it's not the goodness that you feel for others and the joy is a very pure is a very pure feeling. It's not one that's tainted by unwholesome emotions that create attachments. I hope that makes sense. Only through practice will you able to see the difference. Okay. All right. Let me see in the comments. Okay. We have some comments in the chat box about people who might be bodhisattvas and all that. Well, unless you are a bodhisattva, you shouldn't, unless you are Buddhist. Okay. Shifu said, if you are a first stage bodhisattva, you wouldn't be able to know or judge a second stage bodhisattva because it's beyond you. Just like how if you are in kindergarten, you can't really understand what someone in a higher grade, say middle school, is doing because you lack the understanding. You know? So there are a lot of people who say, oh, this person is a bodhisattva, that person is a Buddha. But unless the people doing the saying or the certifications, unless they themselves are at that level of higher, how would they know? You know, how someone says, oh, that person is actually Amitabha Buddha. Says, how do you know? Are you a Buddha yourself? Are you a bodhisattva? What makes you say that? You know, what makes you qualified to say that, basically? Yeah. So, yeah, unless it's a eminent monk who's saying those things, you know, usually practitioners don't pay attention to all those kind of talk. Okay. So much for that. It's time. Let's dedicate merit. So I have an announcement to make. So for the next 4 weeks, I will be on retreat mode. And so we'll take a break in our classes. Oh, excuse me. So we'll take a break in our classes and I don't have a definite date yet, but I will send everyone a WhatsApp message on when we will resume. Most likely, this is the 19th. 1, 2, 3.
Excuse me, Fa Si.
Yes. Yeah.
Do we still have a class on the 26th of this month?
No, for this month, this is the
last class?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's return on 24th of October. How about that? Yeah. Let's confirm 24th of October as our next class. All right. But you can still post questions and discussions to the WhatsApp group. That still continues. Okay, let's dedicate merit. Do you have any questions from anyone? Ron, I know you had something you could share last week, and sorry, this week we don't have time. Maybe when we come back. Any questions? Okay, then let's dedicate merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows to the Buddha. I'm going to move my mic out of the way. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow.